am Claudia Cano-Asbjornsen, your host. Welcome to the Hollywood Makers, and today our episode is going to be fully dedicated to understanding, explaining, and defining the importance of the Hollywood strikes. As most of you know, the WGA and SAG-AFTRA have been on strike for months now. The WGA, which stands for Writers Guild of America, started their strike on May 2nd, while SAG-AFTRA, which stands for Screen Actors Guild American Federation of Television Radio Artists, went on strike on July 14th. But who are these guilds and why are they striking? What is it that they're asking for? What are the repercussions of this massive shift in the entertainment industry? Because I don't want to assume that you have all the background information, we're going to start with on who the industry players are before we dive into all the details and the latest news. So here we go. The WGA is a labor union that represents writers in film, television, radio, and online media. They represent approximately 20,000 members. SAG is a labor union that represents over 160,000 actors, hosts, artists, journalists, and many other performers. It is the largest entertainment union in Hollywood. Both guilds revise their contracts every few years, just to make sure that they're preserving the rights and protecting the interests of the members when it comes to fair compensation and treatment. What are they demanding in the new contracts has a lot to do with the shift that we've had in the entertainment industry in the past few years, and mainly the birth of streaming and the enhancements of technology, more specifically the use of artificial intelligence. So who are they negotiating with to make their demands known? But just like the actors and writers have unions representing them, the major motion picture studios and TV producers have the AMPTP. The AMPTP stands for Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. The AMPTP negotiates on behalf of over 350 studios and TV producers. Big major players like Warner Brothers, Universal Studios, Paramount Pictures, Sony Pictures, Netflix, Amazon Studios, Apple Studios, just to name a few. Now, I will say that there's a lot of people out there who still don't understand why the workers are asking for more money, because they think of Hollywood as this mecca of rich elites. And let's be honest, there are a lot of those there, in front and behind the cameras. But the truth of the matter is that the true laborers, the ones that make up the majority of the workforce, are not the movie stars. They are not rich or greedy. Most are working actors and writers that are not making enough of a living wage. So they are actually getting second jobs just to survive. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the national median pay for actors was $18 an hour last year. In California, the average was $27.73. And in New York, it was $63.39. And though those numbers sound a little better for those states, you have to take in consideration that these people only work temporary jobs or gigs. So a lot of the time they're out of a job, not making any income. So they count on those jobs for that period of time when they're working on that project to make that money. And they're really, if you do the math, it's not anything close to big bucks. SAG-AFTRA confirmed that about 87% of their members earn less than $26,000 a year from acting. And because it's that low, they don't even qualify to get health coverage from the union. Writers, on the other hand, have been showing a decline in the pay in the last 5 years. 33% of the writers were paid the minimum rate 10 years ago. Now, that number has gone up to 49%. Well, now that we are caught up on the who's who and the unions and all that, let's find out what they're really asking. The WGA is asking for higher pay, revised exclusivity deals, better residual deals, and assurances on artificial intelligence. So what are these? Well, higher pay, like I said already, we talked that there's a decline on the way that they are getting paid in the last 10 years. But we also take into account inflation, and that means that their pay has also gone down 14% according to the WGA. So higher pay is one of the main demands on their new contracts. The WGA posted a graphic explaining what their ask was for some of the major studios and streaming services. Conversely, Variety magazine published an article titled Warner Brothers Discovery says it will take a $300 to $500 million hit in 2023 earnings due to the dual WGA SAG-AFTRA strikes. One of those things that really makes you pause and think. Well, in terms of exclusivity deals, TV writers had many rules based on the terms of exclusivity, but the model has changed so much in the recent years with streaming and shorter seasons that those rules really don't apply anymore. For the most part, writers would spend about a year or so working on a long season that used to have 22 to 25 episodes. But now many shows have shorter seasons, some of them just 8 episodes, which means that they're getting paid less per episode, but they also cannot work on other projects because their exclusivity deals doesn't allow them to work somewhere else. That's one of the things that they're asking to revise. Now, when it comes to residuals, that's a really big one. Let me explain and define what residuals are so you can understand why the unions are fighting for them. In Hollywood, residuals are long-term payments to those who have worked on films and television shows negotiated by the unions for reruns and other airings after the initial release. Traditionally, actors and writers are paid for each time a show runs on broadcast or cable TV, or sometimes when we used to buy DVDs and Blu-rays. The payments vary depending on the length of the movie, the length of the show, the size of the role, the budget of the production, and where and when it's going to be shown. Both writers and actors depend on those residual checks to survive between jobs and gigs. But with the birth of streaming, they're no longer receiving those payments. In the case of writers, they would get paid if the work went into syndication or they were sold overseas. Now, reruns were another way for them to get those residuals, but now the shows and the movies are going straight to streaming and they're not getting paid as they normally would. Therefore, part of their demands for the new contract is to create better residuals based on the new business model. Now, when it comes to artificial intelligence assurances, this is also a huge change and shift, not only for the entertainment industry, but for the whole world. The emergence of artificial intelligence technology is changing the landscape across the board. And we're now just starting to see the effects that it has on media and entertainment, but AI will be changing the way we all live, and that just around the corner. You can just look at ChatGPT for your first indication. But I digress. The WGA is concerned that if they don't put certain safeguards around the use of AI and its tools, it can have great ramifications for the future of writers, their careers, and their livelihoods. So what about SAG actors? What are they asking for? Basically the same provisions as the writers: higher pay, residual revisions, and a tighter regulation around AI. In case of higher pay, according to a report from CBS, SAG-AFTRA is requesting an 11% increase to the base rates this year and an 8% raise over the next 2 years to make up for inflation. In the case of residuals, just like we discussed with the writers, their demands are because there's a big shift in the way the entertainment industry has had through the advent of streaming. In the case of actors, they're not just earning residuals the way they would normally receive for the shows and movies because they're not running the same way. The streaming services are paying a smaller amount to have the content in their platforms. Some actors actually have posted their checks on social media platforms just so people can see that they receive cents, not dollars, cents on residual checks. In terms of AI regulations, just like the writers, AI is extremely important for the negotiations of SAG. Executive Director and Chief Negotiator for SAG-AFTRA, Duncan Crouchy Ireland, said AI is the existential threat to the acting profession. On an interview quoted by CBS, he said this about the studios: "They propose that our backroom performers should be able to be scanned, get paid for 1 day's pay, and that the company should be able to own that scan, that likeness for the rest of eternity on any project they want with no consent and no compensation." End quotations. Now imagine if that were true. A lot of background actors actually use this as a platform to launch their careers. They show up once and they get paid for a day's work. But if AI was to do their likeness, it would only show up once and get paid that rate of $175 to $200 for the day, and the studio would own their image and likeness in perpetuity. Now, if that's the case, in my book, that sounds very unethical. And that's one of the main reasons that SAG-AFTRA and WGA want this in their new contracts, an assurance that they will not be replaced by AI. That's a lot of information, I know. And there's still a lot of confusion on why some entertainment shows or movies are still in production, and I actually had to do a lot of research to understand that myself. This is what I found. Some movies and shows have been able to continue because they have entered into interim agreements with SAG-AFTRA. Here's how SAG-AFTRA explains the use of interim agreements. Quotations. Interim agreements is a strategic bargaining tool and an essential part of the union's strategy to strengthen truly independent productions while weakening the resolve of the AMPTP. The interim agreement is a full 70-page contract that includes the terms and conditions in the union's last offer to the studios and streamings during negotiations. This contract is available only to independent producers looking to employ our members on specific productions, and it helps the union achieve its goals by putting pressure on the AMPTP and the struck companies while demonstrating that our proposals are reasonable. End quotes. In the case of movies and shows that are in production, they're really not going against the WGTA because the writing of those projects was completed long before they went into production. So how come some broadcasting talent, hosts, and commercial actors are still working, you ask? Well, I asked the same question. And I'm going to say that I have to thank David Slack. He is a WGA member who was able to explain this very clearly on his social media platforms. This is what he said. Within one union, there can be different bargaining units. A bargaining unit is a group of workers who negotiate together. The WGA has separate bargaining units for news writers and new media journalists. But all our film and TV writers are covered under a single bargaining unit that includes daytime soaps, game shows, and talk shows. SAG-AFTRA has a number of separate bargaining units. For example, they have a separate negotiation and contract for commercials, broadcasting, and video games. So SAG-AFTRA has one of the contracts that's also called Netcode that covers soaps, game shows, and talk shows. This contract was renegotiated in 2022 and is still in effect. SAG-AFTRA members working on these shows are not on strike under this contract. End quotes. Again, I have to thank David Slack for explaining how the unions operate. It was very clear on his social media. So there you have it. Now you know, now I know how this works and how some of these people are exempt from the strike. The strikes have had a major impact, not just on writers and actors, but on the working force behind every production, like directors, producers, lighting techs, makeup artists, grids, designers, assistants, publicists, and so many more. The hit has been so significant that the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that the film and TV business lost about 70,000 jobs in August. This is also due to the layoffs in talent agencies, production service companies, and other businesses that relied on Hollywoods for their income. Many A-listers have joined the picket lines, but many of them have also made major donations to help those affected by the strikes. According to an article published on Deadline on September 11th, says that the Entertainment Community Fund has distributed more than $6.5 million to over 3,100 film and TV workers, and as of September 8. Now SAG-AFTRA, the foundation, meanwhile, has doled out $2.5 million in financial assistance since the actors went on strike in July. Now, if you are one of those people affected, or you know someone who has been affected by the strikes, there's a lot of information on how to get help. For example, on the WGA website, you can go to the strike hub icon that's on the side. You can scroll down and you can find their links to the different funds and resources. Now on the SAG-AFTRA side, they have a dedicated site for it. It's called sagaftrastrike.org. And if you click on the top bar where it says strike, you can click down on member support and you'll find things like the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, the Entertainment Community Fund, and the Motion Picture and Television Fund. And all those services can help you find emergency financial assistance for things like rent, mortgage payments, as well as food, utilities, and medical needs that also include mental health support. We really, really, truly hope here at the Hollywood Makers that this gets resolved sooner rather than later. And now here are the top news that are making waves in the entertainment industry. Drew Barrymore is being called a scab. Drew Barrymore announced that the new season of her show would be starting this September, amid the dual strike. This has generated a lot of backlash and many disappointed fans who don't know why she would decide to go back to production, especially after she was one of the first ones to step out of hosting MTV Movie and TV Awards in support of the strike back in May. She's not violating the SAG-AFTRA strike because, like I mentioned before, the talk show host is part of a different unit that's not striking. However, she and her team are going against the WGA strike because they're having other people write in the show when the actual show writers are on strike. That's why they're calling her a scab. because a scab is a term that's used by the union to call up any worker who takes the place or job of a striking worker. Drew's show is not the only one that's coming back. According to Variety, the Jennifer Hudson Show and The Talk are also set to return this September. California is on the brink of approving SB 799. What is SB 799, you ask? Well, it's a Senate bill that will be receiving the backing of the WGA and SAG-AFTRA. If it passes on the Senate Labor Committee, the Senate, and then it gets signed by the governor, it will allow striking workers to apply for unemployment after 2 weeks. Currently, California workers, not just in the entertainment industry, but in any business or industry that decides to strike, cannot claim unemployment. If the bill passes, it will provide a very needed relief for all those who are striking and depending on the generosity of others to survive this difficult time. Most of the Avengers assembled again for a very private wedding. We didn't even know Chris Evans was engaged, but now Captain America is officially off the market. He married Portuguese actress Alba Bautista, known for a role in the series Warrior Nun. In attendance were other Avengers, including Robert Downey Jr., Chris Hemsworth, and Jeremy Renner. We want to say congrats to the newlyweds. And with this blissful news, we want to say goodbye to you guys in our community. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Remember, we are the Hollywood Makers. You are the Hollywood Makers. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. Till next time.